Let's talk impact, not those little granular, little micro things. So I've kind of got this broken up, Nathan, where we just talking points where we can talk content, on page, technical, local, and link building.
Right.
The big five. So content, what's going on with content? What do the attorneys listening need to do to make their content be seen, to have the ability to be discovered?
Yes, I love this question because especially with personal injury attorneys, because I obviously focus a lot on that in my training and helping other people in my training with this particular vertical. But when it comes to content on personal injury, I just see a lot of mistakes, unfortunately. Okay, and one of the biggest mistakes I see is that everyone understands the basic concept that we need to create service pages. Okay, we need to create very good service pages, and then we need to create supporting content for those service pages. But the challenge is on those service pages, there tends to be this idea that we just need to create a lot of content on these pages, right? Like let's just load them up. Let's just put everything on here and hope that Google sees us as an authority. Well, Google's been getting a lot better about that, right? Before that used to really work well. So like I could really target any keyword and I could create a 10,000 word masterpiece, quote unquote, and just make it longer than everyone else. And that actually worked for a long time. And especially around like 2015, I would just create these epic monstrosities and they would rank for everything. But now Google, because their algorithms have changed so much, they've gotten really, really good at splintering off concepts, and they want to see that granularity when it comes to targeting, right? So like before, you might be able to create one page for personal injury attorney St. Louis, let's say, and you could also maybe rank for car accident lawyer St. Louis, medical malpractice lawyer St. Louis. You could capture it all on one page. Mm-hmm. Those days are long gone, long gone. And so we can, if you want to ask some questions on that point, we can maybe start with service pages because it's really the most important part of this equation, at the bottom of the funnel.
I agree. There's transactions. That's where the consumers are going to make these hiring decisions. And, what's interesting, and I'm going to talk about myself just from, we have the SEO for Lawyers guide, and you've seen the iterations I've had.
Right.
And what's interesting is I think I'm ranking like number 3 right now, and I've got kind of that monstrosity, right? And in the past, it was a little bit shorter and ranked number 1. And it's just like, I think maybe jamming too much. And I think the situation where maybe users don't scroll down far enough, or they just kind of lose interest if there's not that really good hook to keep them on the page, similar to, YouTube strategies and that hook. So I agree. I do want to ask you one question, though.
Sure.
The Google business profile destination URL. The page that you choose to rank, to show in the map pack. What do you think about that page? Because typically that's the only page, the only URL that Google's, that's the destination URL for maps. So, do you load it up with all the practice areas? Like, what's your thought on that page?
That part's a little tricky, but my philosophy is always go back to intent. I always want to think about intent. So, yes, you could load up that page and try to capture to basically, to lack of a better word, manipulate the local pack, right? To try to capture as much ground there. But even then, even in the local pack these days, man, it's gotten so granular. Like if you're outside of that core location, like if your address, like let's say we're targeting St. Louis and your address is in Clayton, it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, it is going to be and that's a relatively new thing. I mean, it's not, I'd say the last year and a half, 2 years, it's really started to get really tight on that. And before, I could be in I could be in Clayton and I could rank in St. Louis in the local pack just because of the the service area. But these days, very, very difficult. I think, when you look at the local pack ranking factors, like location is absolutely by far the most important thing. I mean, it's not even close. So we can talk about that as well. But yeah.
I agree. It makes me think of, I worked with a firm in Greenbrill at Wheeler in California, and they had a Santa Monica office and wanted to rank in Los Angeles. And it's just like,
no way.
it's just challenging. So, we got several little SEO topics to cover. Is there anything else you want to mention on content, or you want to bump over to on page?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot I can mention on content. So going back, so let's kind of go back to the service area page, just because for personal and really any local business, right? That's really those are the money makers, and unfortunately, most people tend to they try to mix intents. That's the issue. Okay, so we have bottom, let's call it investigative intent, which really just means what is the searcher thinking about when they search that query. So if someone searches, personal injury lawyer in St. Louis, they haven't necessarily decided who they're going to work with yet. They're doing their research, they're doing their due diligence, and so at that point, if someone lands on your page, we need to make it abundantly clear that we are the personal injury lawyer that they should use. And so that's when case studies come in. That's when frequently asked questions come in, specifically to the lawyer, right? Case studies, results, anything that can really push that person deeper into that sales funnel. Excuse me. And that's really what's going to make the difference on those pages. So for me, like these days, when I create a service page, I'm thinking about how do I convert this person, right? And truthfully, Google is actually tracking a lot of this as well. Google's tracking how someone interacts with that page. And so we don't necessarily want the searcher to spend a lot of time on the page. We're not trying to do that. We want them to convert as soon as possible. We want to see a goal completion or even at least a second page visit, right? Some sort of user metric that's positive ultimately. So
I couldn't agree more. And do you think that why us, all the validation of their experience and why they're the choice plays into EAT, the expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like for me these days, like the EAT standard is so good because it kind of forces you to create better pages, right? Because like, although it's not technically every variable is not programmed into the algorithm, it's really designed for the manual reviewers. It's still the standard that we should try to go for. So, and it's also just from like a non-SEO perspective, thinking about just conversions. Like I always think about with the service pages, if I was going to create a page for PPC, what would I do? Right? Would I create a 5,000 word article and waste my money getting them to read the history of personal injury on my service page? It just doesn't make sense at all. So for me, like when I think about it, I'm trying to create the best service page that's going to convert. And then I'm going to support that page. Now we're going to start talking about how do we build topic authority locally, right, to support that local page. And so there's a lot we can dig into there, but the one part, and this is just like, I love this topic so much, so sorry for kind of ranting on this, but this is just like, I talk about this so much. And one of the biggest issues I see is, so like, first of all, service pages usually aren't structured right. That's problem number one. Problem number two is...
You mean personal injury lawyer statistics and auto access statistics should be on the page you're trying to convert?
Yeah, possibly. So the other part is the supporting content. So for a lot of personal injury lawyers, for a long time, it would be, what is personal injury? Or what is it? What is a car accident? It's like, okay, we're kind of on the right track, but we're not quite there, right? So the problem is, like, I see this often. It will be focusing on the topic, right, of personal injury. So that's good. You've got about 50% of the way there. But the problem is you're targeting national queries. You're not actually building the topic authority and that local authority. So we have to combine those together. And so what I try to do is I try to find ideas that are specific to that location that we're going after. So instead of personal injury statistics, no, I want to see how many car accidents are there in Clayton in February on average. Right? I want to get so specific on that front that now not only does that help build real topic authority locally, but it also functions as link bait too. Right?
How likely is your car to be hitting Soulard on a hit and run?
Correct. Very high. So, but yeah, so that's where my mind goes with it. I want to make sure that we have both of those things together. And then one other kind of nuance on that is, like, sometimes I'll give that recommendation and people will start to do that. But what they'll do is they'll take an idea that doesn't have variance on the local level. So for example, what is creatine? Okay. I'll see some people be like, what is creatine in St. Louis? Like, okay, that's not what I'm talking about, because there's no variance in California versus New York on that topic. So what we want to do is we want to find variance specific to that location. Personal injury is so easy. There's so many things you could do. Medical malpractice specific to this area, as far as the settlement amounts, right? Settlement amounts in St. Louis versus Los Angeles are probably radically different, I would imagine.
Completely agree about those nuances and those things to make your content more specific.
Right.
Even to the point where we're adding neighborhoods to our pages. So like that St. Louis page, we'll have Clayton mentioned, we'll have Soulard, we'll have Central SN, just to make them super, super relevant, because you're not going to make a dedicated page for Central SN, right?
No.